The morning began like most others for the young girl, with the sound of her brother coughing in the corner of the small room. The walls were cracked, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and the air always smelled faintly of dust and damp cloth. She woke up before the sun, as she always did, because hunger never let her sleep for long. Her stomach felt tight and empty, but she ignored it. She pulled the thin blanket up around her brother's shoulders and watched his chest rise and fall. Each breath sounded weaker than the last. She was not old, but life had made her careful. Every move she made was quiet, measured, as if noise itself could make things worse. Their parents had been gone for some time now. There had been no dramatic goodbye, no final words, just a day when they never came back. Since then, she had learned to cook with almost nothing, to stretch food meant for one person into meals for two, and to smile in public so people wouldn't ask questions. That morning, there was nothing left to cook. No rice, no bread, no coins hidden in the jar she checked every night. She opened the jar anyway, just to be sure, turning it upside down and shaking it. Nothing fell out. She sighed softly and put it back in its place. Her brother stirred and opened his eyes. He tried to sit up, but failed. His lips were dry, and his face looked smaller than it should have. When he spoke, his voice was barely louder than a whisper. "Did you eat already?" he asked. She smiled quickly and nodded. "Yes, I'm full." It was a lie she had told many times. He smiled back, trusting her completely. That trust hurt more than hunger ever could. She stepped outside into the narrow street. The city was already awake. Vendors were setting up carts, buses were honking, and people rushed past her as if she were invisible. She walked slowly, thinking, planning, counting her steps like she was counting chances. She had tried asking for work before. Most people turned her away without looking at her face. Others promised to call and never did as she walked. She passed the bakery. The smell stopped her. Fresh bread was lined up behind the glass, golden and warm, steam still rising. Her mouth filled with saliva, and her stomach twisted painfully. She stood there longer than she meant to, staring at the loaves as if they were something unreal, something meant for another world. She remembered the way her brother's hands had shaken when he tried to drink water earlier. She remembered how light he felt when she helped him sit up. Fear crept into her chest, slow and heavy. She told herself she would just ask. She stepped inside the bakery. The bell above the door rang softly. The owner was busy arranging bread, his back turned. She cleared her throat and waited. He did not turn around. "Sir," she said quietly, "I was wondering if I could work for some food." "Just for today?" He glanced at her briefly, his eyes already moving past her. "No work." "Go." She nodded and stepped back. She waited a moment longer, hoping he might change his mind. He didn't. She turned to leave, but the smell followed her. Her legs felt heavy, and her chest burned. In her mind, she saw her brother's face again, pale, weak, smiling at her lie. The owner turned away to speak to someone near the back. Her hands moved before her. Thoughts could stop them. She reached out, grabbed a small loaf from the edge of the shelf, and pulled it close to her chest. Her heart began to race so fast she thought it might burst. She turned toward the door. "Hey!" The shout froze her in place. The owner rushed forward and grabbed her arm. The bread fell to the floor and rolled away. People outside stopped and stared as he dragged her toward the counter. "She's stealing," he yelled. Her face burned with shame. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't do it for myself. My brother hasn't eaten in days." The owner scoffed. "That's what they all say." People gathered quickly. Some whispered. Some laughed. A few pulled out their phones. No one asked about her brother. No one asked why her hands were trembling or why her clothes were worn thin. She bent down and picked up the bread, holding it carefully as if it might break. "I'll pay you back," she said. "I promise. Just not today." The owner pushed the bread from her hands. It hit the ground again. "Get out before I call the police." Tears filled her eyes, but she did not cry. Crying wouldn't feed her brother. Across the street, a dark car had stopped. Inside sat a man who was used to comfort and control. He had more money than he could spend in a lifetime, but that morning he was late and irritated. Thinking about meetings and numbers, his driver slowed as the crowd formed. "What's going on?" he asked. The driver pointed. "Looks like a girl stealing bread." The man leaned forward, watching. He expected anger or excuses. Instead, he saw something else. The girl didn't shout. She didn't run. She only kept looking at the bread on the floor, like it was the most important thing in the world. He watched her face carefully. There was fear, yes, but also something else. Determination. Love. She wasn't asking to be forgiven. She was asking to be allowed to care for someone else. The owner shoved her toward the door. "Go and don't come back." She knelt down one last time and gently pushed the bread back toward the shelf, her fingers lingering on it for just a second. Then she stood and walked away, her shoulders straight even though her legs shook. The man in the car felt a tightness in his chest he did not expect. He told the driver to wait. He wanted to see where she went. She walked fast, wiping her face with her sleeve before anyone could see tears fall. She did not look back at the bakery. Looking back would only make it harder as she disappeared down the street. The man realized something that stayed with him. Long after the car started moving, again, that bread was never the real thing she was trying to take. She was trying to take one more day for her brother, and somewhere deep inside, without fully understanding why, he knew that this moment was not over. It was only the beginning. The girl walked quickly down the street, trying to ignore the whispers and the laughter of the crowd at the bakery. Her hands still tingled from the brief contact with the bread, and a hollow ache sat deep in her stomach. She did not dare look back. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she pushed herself forward, thinking only of her brother waiting at home. The narrow streets twisted and turned, and she knew them well. Every broken tile, every cracked wall, every narrow alley was familiar. She avoided the large, busy roads where people moved quickly and did not notice children like her. She kept her head down, pulling the thin coat around her shoulders tighter against the morning chill. Despite the cold, sweat gathered on her forehead from fear and shame. She could feel eyes on her from the corners of the street, but she refused to look. Some people had already pointed at her and laughed, their phones raised to record what they called a crime. She hated the way the world could be so cruel when someone was desperate, but she had learned to survive it. She finally turned down a quieter lane, away from the main street. Her small, worn shoes shuffled along the uneven pavement. She was exhausted, but she could not rest until her brother had something to eat. She held the loaf of bread she had abandoned at the bakery in her hands again, though it was now gone, leaving only the memory of its warmth and smell as she walked. She remembered all the times she had tried to ask for help before. People looked at her like she was invisible or worse, like she did not deserve anything at all. Once a kind woman had given her a small bag of rice, but she had to hide it quickly because others in the neighborhood had seen and wanted to take it away. Every act of kindness was fleeting, every opportunity seemed to slip through her fingers, and yet she continued to try because she had no other choice. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind her. "Hey, little girl." Wait, she froze, her heart jumping into her throat. She did not know who it was, but her first instinct was to run. She spun around, ready to flee, but what she saw made her pause. A man stood there, well-dressed, with clean shoes and an expensive watch gleaming in the morning sun. He did not look angry, only curious. "I saw what happened at the bakery," he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "Are you all right?" The girl hesitated. She had been warned her whole life not to trust strangers, and yet there was something in his eyes that made her stop. They were not laughing, not judging, just watching. She could feel the intensity of his gaze, but it did not feel threatening. "I'm fine," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I just need to get home," he nodded slowly. "I understand. But why were you taking that bread?" Her stomach clenched. How could she explain? How could she make someone understand that she had stolen because she loved someone else more than herself? That she had risked punishment because the life of another depended on it? "My brother," she whispered. "He hasn't eaten. I I just wanted to give him something." The man's eyes softened, and he took a step closer. "I see. You did it for him, not for yourself." She nodded quickly, feeling a mix of fear and relief. No one had asked why before. Everyone had only called her a thief, a criminal, a bad girl. No one had ever stopped to understand. "Do you have anywhere to go?" he asked. The girl shook her head. She had a roof over her head, of sorts, but it was barely safe. The walls were thin, the windows cracked, and in winter, the cold came through like knives. She had nowhere to run if things went wrong, nowhere to turn for help. The man looked at her carefully, studying her movements, her eyes, the way her hands clenched. He saw the courage in her, even though she tried to hide it. He saw her love, her fear, and her determination, all wrapped into one small frame. "You don't deserve this," he said softly, more to himself than to her. "No one should have to steal to keep their family alive." The girl's eyes widened. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Usually, people shouted, scolded, or walked away. Sometimes they laughed. But this man, this stranger, he seemed different. "Are you going to call the police?" she asked nervously. The word made her stomach twist. She had heard stories of children like her being taken away, never to be seen again by their siblings. She could not bear the thought of leaving her brother alone. "No," he said. "I'm not going to call the police. I want to understand first." They stood in silence for a few moments. The city moved around them, people rushing to work, the noise of cars and buses filling the air. But for a moment, it felt like time slowed down. She noticed the way he watched her, not with judgment, but with something she could not name. Respect, maybe, or maybe sadness. Something deep and human. "I need to get him food," she said finally. "Please, I don't want trouble. Think I can help with that," he said. "But I want to see him. I want to make sure he's all right." She had been trained to refuse strangers, to run, to hide, but something inside told her this man was different. She nodded slowly, unsure if she was making the right decision, but desperate for help. Together, they walked through the streets. She led him to a small, broken-down building where her brother lay on a tattered mattress. He looked even weaker than before, his cheeks hollow, his eyes dull with hunger. When he saw her, he tried to smile, and she rushed to his side, holding him gently. "I got you something," she whispered, though there was nothing in her hands. The bread was gone, and she had no other food to offer yet. The man stepped closer, kneeling down so he was at their level. He reached into a small bag he carried and pulled out warm sandwiches, fresh fruit, and milk. The girl's eyes widened in shock. "For him," he said, handing the food over. "Eat, you need it." Her brother's eyes lit up as he reached for the food. The girl felt a mix of relief and disbelief. She could not remember the last time she had seen him smile with such strength. She knelt beside him, watching him eat, and for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of hope. The man watched quietly, making sure they were safe. He asked no questions about the bread, about the bakery, about the shame that had chased her through the streets. He only ensured they had what they needed. When her brother finished eating, he leaned against her, tired but satisfied. The girl felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she had not known in a long time. She looked at the man, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to," he said. "I just want to help. That's all." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that not everyone would turn away or judge her. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. The man stayed with them a while longer, making sure they had enough food and that the girl knew where to find help if she needed it. Then quietly he left, slipping away before anyone could notice. The girl watched him go, a mix of wonder and disbelief filling her mind. That day she learned something important. Not everyone would judge her for doing what she had to do. Not everyone would call her a criminal without looking at the reason. And most importantly, there were still people in the world who cared enough to help, even if it was just one small act of kindness. As the sun climbed higher, the girl held her brother close. Feeling the warmth of the food in his belly and the warmth of hope in her heart, She knew life would still be hard, and she would still face challenges, but for the first time, she felt a little less alone. And somewhere, in the distance, a man who had never expected to be moved by a child's courage and love quietly carried the memory of their faces with him, touched in a way he would never forget. The girl spent the rest of the day tending to her brother, making sure he was comfortable and had enough to eat. The warmth of the food brought color back to his cheeks, and for a moment, she let herself relax. But she knew that this moment of relief could not last forever. The streets outside were still unforgiving, the world still harsh, and tomorrow would come with the same challenges. She watched her brother sleep, his chest rising and falling steadily, and felt a mixture of pride and worry. She had done what she had to do, but the fear of being unable to provide for him again weighed heavily on her. Hunger and poverty were constant companions, and she had grown accustomed to the gnawing ache of an empty stomach. Yet seeing him safe, if only for a short time, brought a faint glimmer of hope. The man who had helped them earlier did not leave her thoughts. She wondered who he was, why he had cared, and whether she would ever see him again. There was something gentle in his eyes, something that made her feel that maybe, just maybe, not everyone would turn away when someone needed help. But she knew better than to rely on strangers. Experience had taught her that kindness was rare, and even rare kindness could disappear as quickly as it arrived. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The girl decided she needed to venture outside again to find more food or assistance. She could not let her brother go hungry again. She wrapped him in a thin blanket and carefully lifted him, supporting his weak body. Her small arms shook under his weight, but she did not complain. She would carry him as long as she could, for he was all she had left. She walked silently through the quiet streets, avoiding the main roads where she could be seen and judged. Her eyes scanned every corner, every alley, for signs of food or opportunity. It was then she noticed a small group of children playing near a closed shop. They looked at her curiously, some whispering to each other. She smiled faintly and nodded, but kept moving. She could not afford distractions, no matter how innocent they seemed. As she turned a corner, she felt a presence behind her. She tensed, ready to defend herself, but when she glanced over her shoulder, she saw the same man from the bakery following at a careful distance. Her heart raced. How had he found her again? Did he mean harm, or was he just curious? He did not speak immediately. He walked at a measured pace, giving her space, observing her silently. There was a weight in his gaze, a mixture of concern and understanding. Finally, he called out softly, "You don't have to do this alone." The girl stopped. Her first instinct was to run, to protect her brother from any possible danger, but she noticed the calm in his voice. It was not commanding, not judgmental. It carried a sincerity she had rarely encountered. "I can't. I have to take care of him," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I know," he replied, "and that's why I want to help. Let me see where he is. I want to make sure he's safe." The girl hesitated, torn between caution and desperation. She had been taught to trust no one, to assume the worst. But the fear of failing her brother again was stronger than her fear of strangers. Slowly, she nodded and led him to their small home. Every step was careful, her senses alert for danger, yet the man did not rush or crowd her. He followed quietly, giving her space, and showing respect for her decisions. Inside, the room was dim and smelled of damp cloth and dust. Her brother stirred at their entrance, his weak eyes opening to see the man standing beside her. The girl felt her stomach tighten, unsure of how her brother would react. He had never seen anyone like him before, someone so clean, so confident, yet calm and gentle. The man knelt down to be at their level, his eyes softening as he took in the scene. "You've been doing a remarkable job," he said, almost as if speaking to himself. "It's not easy what you're doing, but you've kept him alive. That's incredible." The girl felt a lump in her throat. Praise from a stranger was rare, almost unheard of. Most people had only criticized or scolded her, and yet here was someone acknowledging the courage and love she had put into every action. Even when the world had turned against her, she could barely speak. I just try," she whispered. I have to. He's all I have. The man nodded, understanding more than her words could express. He reached into a small bag he carried and pulled out fresh bread, milk and fruit, placing them gently in front of her brother. The boy's eyes lit up at the sight, and he reached for the food eagerly. The girl watched, relief washing over her, as her brother's face slowly regained color and strength. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight in her chest lighten. Someone had seen her struggle and had chosen to care, not to judge, not to punish, but to support. And in that moment, she realized that not all help came with strings, and not all people were blind to the hardships of others. The man stayed for a while, ensuring that her brother had enough to eat, and that the girl knew where to find additional support if needed. He offered advice quietly, without forcing his presence, allowing her to feel in control while gently guiding her. His respect and patience were something she had never encountered before, and it made her cautious heart open just a little. When it was time for him to leave, he stood, giving them a small nod. "I'll check on you again," he said softly, "but you're not alone in this. Remember that." The girl watched him walk away, unsure if she would ever see him again, but feeling an unfamiliar warmth of hope inside her. Her brother leaned against her, still weak but fed, and she felt a determination rise within her. They had survived another day, and maybe, just maybe, there were people in the world who could make life a little less heavy. She sat beside her brother as the sun disappeared completely, casting shadows across the room. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she could care for him without fear, where kindness existed alongside the hardships of the world. The memory of the man's gentle eyes stayed with her, a quiet reminder that courage, love, and humanity could appear even in the darkest moments as night fell. She held her brother close, whispering promises of a better tomorrow. She knew the world would not be easy, and there would still be struggles and challenges ahead. But with the taste of kindness in her heart and the knowledge that someone had seen her efforts and understood, for now, that strength was enough to carry them both into the night, holding on to hope that the next day might bring even more light. The next morning, the girl woke early as usual, her stomach still empty, but her determination unchanged. She helped her brother sit up and sip a little water, careful not to overfill his tiny stomach. The previous day's food had given him strength, but it would not last. She knew she needed to find more, and the thought of having to face another day without enough filled her with dread. Outside, the streets were beginning to wake up. Vendors were shouting their goods, carts rattled over uneven pavement, and the scent of fresh bread and fried food filled the air. The girl kept her eyes focused on the ground as she walked, avoiding the gaze of anyone passing by. She knew the world could be harsh and unforgiving. She had learned to protect herself and her brother through silence and caution. As she turned a familiar corner, she felt a presence following her. It was the same man from the bakery, the man who had given them food and a glimpse of hope. She stopped and faced him, unsure whether to be relieved or afraid. "I didn't want to bother you," he said softly, noticing her hesitation. "But I want to make sure you and your brother are okay. Can I help in some way?" The girl's eyes flickered with mistrust, but desperation made her consider the offer. She had been alone for so long, fending for herself and her brother, that the idea of help felt foreign, almost dangerous. Yet the memory of the warm bread, the gentle look in his eyes, and the feeling that he had truly understood their situation nudged her toward trust. "Follow me," she said quietly, leading him to their small, dim room. Her brother lay resting on the mattress, weak but awake. He blinked at the sight of the man and tried to smile. The man knelt down to be at their level, his eyes scanning the room with care. He noticed the cracked walls, the thin blanket covering her brother, and the empty corners that should have been filled with simple necessities like clothes, food, and warmth. A deep sigh escaped him, but he kept his composure, focusing instead on helping them in any way he could. "I think it's time to make sure you're safe for more than just a day," he said. "There are people who can provide food, shelter, and care. You don't have to struggle alone anymore." The girl's heart raced. She had spent so many years protecting her brother on her own, fearing that anyone who tried to help might take him away, judge her, or make life even harder. The thought of trusting someone completely was terrifying. But the reality of her brother's weak body and hungry eyes was even more frightening. "I don't know," she whispered. "I've always done this alone." "What if it goes wrong?" He smiled gently. "I will stay with you until it's safe. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Sometimes, accepting help is the bravest choice of all. She hesitated for a moment longer, then nodded. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, and a small spark of hope began to grow within her. She took his hand and guided him through the narrow streets, careful to avoid the eyes of people who might judge or scorn them. Together, they walked to a nearby shelter that offered meals, medical care, and a safe place for children like her brother. Inside the shelter, volunteers greeted them with kind smiles and warm words. The girl felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. She had never experienced kindness like this without strings attached, and it was almost overwhelming. She held her brother close as they were led to a small room, provided with food, clean clothes, and blankets. For the first time in a long while, she saw her brother's eyes light up with excitement, curiosity, and safety. The man stayed nearby, speaking quietly to the volunteers, making arrangements for their care, and ensuring that the girl retained her independence and dignity. He did not demand anything from her, nor did he impose his authority. Instead, he offered guidance and support, allowing her to make choices and regain some control over her life. As days passed, the girl learned how to accept help without feeling ashamed. She found joy in small moments, preparing a meal for her brother, reading a borrowed book, and sharing laughter that had been absent for far too long. She began to trust again, not blindly, but cautiously, recognizing that there were people in the world who could provide support without expecting anything in return. The man visited occasionally, checking on their progress and offering quiet encouragement. Each time he saw them, he felt a deep sense of connection and empathy. The girl's courage and love for her brother reminded him of something he had lost touch with in his own life: the raw, unfiltered humanity that money and success could never replace. One afternoon, he asked the girl to sit with him outside in the sun. He spoke gently about her strength, her bravery, and the choices she had made to care for her brother. She listened, unsure of how to respond, but grateful for the acknowledgement of the sacrifices she had made. "You have done something remarkable," he said. "Most people would have given up, would have let fear or shame control them. But you acted out of love, and that is more powerful than any obstacle." Tears filled her eyes, but they were tears of relief and understanding. For the first time, she felt that her struggles were seen and valued. She realized that accepting help did not make her weak. It made her human. The man arranged for longer-term care, ensuring that her brother would receive regular meals, medical attention, and educational opportunities. He also provided support for the girl, offering guidance, resources, and the freedom to pursue her own dreams. He never demanded anything in return, never tried to control her life, but simply allowed her to grow and protect her brother in a safe environment. As weeks turned into months, the girl began to thrive. Her brother's health improved steadily, and she discovered a sense of purpose and security she had never known. The world was still challenging, but she no longer faced it alone. She learned that it was possible to act with love, courage, and integrity while accepting support from others. The man watched from a distance, silently proud of the choices she had made. She had preserved her dignity, protected her brother, and embraced the opportunity for a better life. His heart ached with admiration and empathy, and he realized that her actions had reminded him of something he had long forgotten: the profound power of compassion in human. As the sun set and painted the sky in warm hues, the girl and her brother sat together, feeling safe, full, and hopeful. The man observed quietly from a distance, knowing that his role was not to take over their lives, but to support, guide, and empower them. He had seen the strength and resilience that came from love and sacrifice, and it had left an indelible mark on his heart in that quiet moment. The girl understood something crucial. Life would still present challenges, but she no longer had to face them alone. She had learned that accepting help was not weakness, and that sometimes the bravest choice of all was to trust, to hope, and to believe in the kindness of others. And as she held her brother close, she knew that the choices she had made had changed everything for both of them, opening a door to a future filled with possibility, safety, and love. The days turned into weeks, and the girl and her brother settled into a routine that had once seemed impossible. Their small room at the shelter was filled with warmth, laughter, and the comforting presence of safety. The girl took pride in caring for her brother, preparing meals, helping him read, and ensuring he rested well. She found joy in his smiles and his laughter, and in the knowledge that he no longer suffered from hunger or neglect. The man who had first seen her struggle visited occasionally, always quietly, never imposing himself. He watched from a distance as the girl blossomed into someone confident, resourceful, and strong, someone who had endured hardship without losing compassion. She was not perfect, but she had an integrity that could not be taught, a resilience that could not be broken. And her love for her brother shone in every action, every decision, every word. One afternoon, he arrived at the shelter, his presence calm and unobtrusive. The girl noticed him immediately, her heart recognizing a familiar and trusted figure. Her brother, now stronger and healthier, ran to him with curiosity, asking questions and exploring the world with a confidence he had never known before. The man smiled, kneeling to greet the boy. He handed him a small toy, something simple but meaningful, and watched as the child's eyes lit up with delight. The girl stood nearby, her hands folded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and humility. She had never been comfortable receiving attention or gifts, but she realized that kindness could exist without strings. That support could come without judgment. "Look at him," the man said softly, more to himself than to her. "Look how far you've brought him." The girl's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from the weight of everything she had endured and the hope she now felt. "I just did what I had to do," she whispered. "And that," he replied, "is what makes you extraordinary. Most people would have given up, would have let circumstances dictate their choices. But you acted with love, with courage. That is something no one can take away from you." The girl looked at him, trying to understand. She had always believed that survival meant hiding, running, doing whatever it took without drawing attention. But she now realized that true strength came not only from endurance, but from the ability to care, to trust, and to accept help when it was needed most. Days turned into months, and the girl and her brother began to thrive. The boy attended classes at the shelter, learning new skills and making friends. He ran in the courtyard, laughed with other children, and began to dream about a future beyond hunger and fear. The girl helped him with homework, guided him through the challenges of growing up, and encouraged him to explore the world with curiosity and confidence. The man continued to watch quietly, ensuring that they had what they needed without interfering with their lives. He provided support through educational opportunities, medical care, small gestures of kindness that allowed them to flourish. He never demanded repayment, never sought recognition, and never tried to control their choices. His presence was a reminder that compassion could exist in its purest form. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the man found himself sitting quietly on a bench nearby. He watched the girl and her brother as they played together, their laughter filling the air. He felt a lump in his throat, a weight that he could not explain, and tears threatened to spill over. For a moment, he allowed himself to reflect on the journey that had brought him here. He had seen countless struggles in his life, helped in ways both large and small, but nothing had moved him like this. The girl's courage, her unwavering love for her brother, and her ability to survive with dignity had touched him deeply. He realized that he had been reminded of something he had long forgotten: the raw power of human compassion. The way love could transform even the darkest moments. He wiped his eyes discreetly, hoping no one would notice. He did not cry for pity or sorrow, but for the strength and humanity he had witnessed. The girl and her brother had survived against the odds, and in doing so, had reminded him of the beauty and resilience of the human spirit. The girl approached him quietly, sensing his emotion. "Are you all right?" she asked softly, he smiled, a mixture of sadness and joy. Yes, he said. I'm more than all right. You've shown me something I had forgotten. You've reminded me what truly matters. She tilted her head, curious but humble. What do you mean? You've taught me that love, courage, and compassion are stronger than wealth, power, or influence, he explained. You've reminded me that even in the hardest times, humanity can shine through. That is why I cried earlier. The girl nodded slowly, understanding without needing more explanation. She had never sought recognition or reward, only to ensure that her brother survived. And now she realized that her actions had touched someone deeply, one who had the power to make a difference in countless lives. Yet for her, the reward was simple. Her brother was safe, healthy, and happy in the days that followed. Life continued with a sense of normalcy and hope. The girl and her brother thrived, supported by the shelter, the man's quiet guidance, and the small community that had welcomed them. She learned new skills, helped other children, and slowly began to envision a future beyond survival. Her heart was lighter, her spirit stronger, and her love for her brother remained the guiding force in every decision. The man continued to watch from a distance, proud and humbled by the resilience and courage he had witnessed. He knew that he had not changed their lives entirely. They had changed themselves through determination, love, and unwavering commitment. His role had been to support, to provide opportunities, and to recognize the strength that already existed within them. One afternoon, as they sat together on a bench outside, the girl looked at her brother playing in the courtyard and smiled. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment and gratitude, knowing that their struggles had not been in vain. They had survived, and in doing so had discovered the power of hope, the importance of compassion, and the unbreakable bond of love. The man, sitting quietly nearby, allowed himself one final reflection. He realized that the girl's actions, her choices, and her courage had left an indelible mark on his heart. She had reminded him of the value of humanity, the importance of empathy, and the extraordinary strength that could exist in even the smallest, most overlooked individuals. As the sun set and the city began to quiet, the girl and her brother walked home hand in hand, their laughter and chatter filling the air. The man watched them for a moment longer, tears in his eyes, and then turned away, knowing that their journey had only just begun. He had witnessed something extraordinary, an act of love that had changed lives, inspired hope, and reminded him of the beauty that exists even in the darkest corners of the world. And in that moment, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, the girl and her brother would face them with courage, love, and the knowledge that they were never truly alone. The days that followed felt like a new chapter in the girl and her brother's lives. The shelter had become more than just a place to sleep and eat. It was a space where they could dream, learn, and grow without the constant shadow of fear and hunger. The girl found herself waking early, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She wanted to make the most of each day, to provide for her brother, and to explore opportunities she had never imagined possible. Her brother's laughter echoed through the small courtyard, a sound that warmed her heart and gave her strength. He was growing stronger, more confident, and his curiosity about the world seemed endless. She encouraged him to explore, to ask questions, and to learn, while always keeping a watchful eye to protect him from harm. The girl had always been the caretaker, the protector, but now she began to see that it was okay to allow others to help, to share the burden that had once weighed entirely on her shoulders. The man who had first intervened in their lives continued to support them, quietly and respectfully. He did not impose himself, but offered guidance, resources, and encouragement whenever it was needed. Sometimes he would sit in the background, watching them with a soft smile, marveling at the resilience and love that seemed to flow effortlessly from the girl. He had witnessed countless stories of struggle, but few had touched him so deeply. Her courage and devotion had shown him a truth he had long forgotten: the true value of empathy and human connection. One afternoon, he approached the girl with a gentle smile. "You've done something extraordinary," he said. "Not many people could have faced what you did and come out with such strength and love." The girl looked at him, humility and gratitude in her eyes. "I just wanted to take care of my brother," she replied softly. "Everything else, it just happened along the way." He shook his head. No. What you've done is far more than that. You've shown the world that love can be stronger than fear. That courage can exist even in the smallest hearts, and that hope can thrive even in the darkest places. Her cheeks flushed, and she looked down, unsure how to respond. She had never thought of herself as remarkable. She had only wanted to survive, to protect her brother, and to do what was necessary each day. Yet here was someone recognizing her strength, someone acknowledging the sacrifices and choices she had made with love at the center. As time passed, the girl began to dream about the future, something she had never allowed herself to do before. She imagined a life where her brother and she could thrive without fear, where they could pursue education, hobbies, and experiences that had once been impossible. The shelter provided lessons, workshops, and opportunities to learn, and she embraced each one with determination. She helped other children as well, sharing what she had learned from her own experiences, teaching them that it was possible to rise above circumstances with courage and heart. Her brother grew stronger every day, and the bond between them deepened. They shared laughter, stories, and dreams, and she felt a sense of pride and fulfillment that she had never known. She realized that the struggles they had endured had not only shaped them, but had also strengthened their connection, creating a bond that could not be broken. The man continued to support them discreetly, ensuring they had the resources to continue learning, growing, and thriving. He marveled at their resilience and determination, feeling both humbled and inspired. He understood that his role was not to control or direct their lives, but to provide support and allow them to flourish on their own terms. Watching the girl nurture her brother, face challenges with grace, and embrace the opportunities presented to her filled him with hope and admiration. One evening, as the sun set and the shelter quieted down, the girl and her brother sat together in the courtyard. The warm light of the setting sun cast a gentle glow over their faces, and they shared a moment of peace and contentment. She looked at her brother and smiled, thinking of how far they had come from the days of hunger, fear, and uncertainty. "I'm glad we have each other," she said softly. He nodded, his eyes reflecting trust and love. "Me too. I feel safe now." The girl's heart swelled with emotion. For the first time in her life, she felt that they could face the world with hope and confidence, that they could dream and build a future together. The years of struggle had not been in vain. They had prepared them to appreciate kindness, to value love, and to recognize the strength within themselves. The man watched from a distance, quietly proud of the choices they had made and the progress they had achieved. He felt tears welling in his eyes again, not from sadness, but from awe and gratitude. He had seen the impact of love, courage, and humanity firsthand, and it had reminded him of what truly mattered in life. Money, power, and status could not create the warmth, hope, and resilience that the girl had brought into the world simply by protecting her brother and never giving up. Days became weeks, and weeks became months. The girl continued to grow, her confidence and skills expanding with each passing day. She took on responsibilities at the shelter, helping other children and becoming a role model for those who faced similar challenges. Her brother thrived alongside her, learning, playing, and growing in ways he never could have imagined during the dark days of hunger and fear. Through it all, the man remained a quiet presence, offering guidance when necessary, but always allowing the girl to make her own decisions. He admired her independence, her intelligence, and her unwavering love for her brother. She had transformed their lives not only by surviving, but by embracing the opportunities that had been presented to them and using them to create a better future. One evening, as the two children sat together under the fading light, the girl reflected on the journey they had taken. She thought of the days filled with fear, hunger, and uncertainty, and how far they had come. She realized that while the past could never be erased, it had shaped her into the person she was now: strong, compassionate, and determined. "I think we're ready for the next chapter," she whispered to her brother. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." He smiled, his trust and love evident in his eyes. Together he agreed. The man, watching from a distance, felt a sense of completion and hope. He had witnessed a remarkable transformation, not only in the lives of the girl and her brother, but also within himself. Their courage, resilience, and love had reminded him of the power of humanity and the importance of compassion in a world that often seemed indifferent. And so, a new beginning unfolded for the girl and her brother. They had endured hardship, faced fear, and navigated a world that had not always been kind. Yet through it all, they had discovered hope, strength, and the profound impact of love. With each passing day, they continued to grow, learning, dreaming, and embracing the possibilities that life now offered. The girl knew that challenges would still come, that the world could be unforgiving, but she also knew that she and her brother could face them together. They had survived, and in surviving, they had found the courage to dream, the strength to protect one another, and the wisdom to recognize the value of compassion, kindness, and hope. In the quiet moments of reflection, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the man who had intervened, for the shelter that had provided safety and opportunity, and for the love that had guided her through every hardship. She understood that the future was uncertain, but with courage, determination, and the bond she shared with her brother, they were ready to face whatever came next. And as the sun set, casting a warm glow over the courtyard, the girl and her brother held hands, ready to step into a life filled with possibility, hope, and the enduring strength of love.